Get started here. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest Engagifii webinar. Today's webinar session is called 5 Things You Need to Know About Member Engagement. Now, before we dive into the content, I want to take just a moment to tell you guys a little bit about Engagifii. Engagifii is not just another association management platform. Engagement is actually our top priority. That's why we named ourselves Engagifii. It truly is a member engagement and association management system built with guidance from associations that are industry leaders in member engagement. And as a platform, Engagifii is everything an association needs to manage their day-to-day, including conferences, government relations, training, and it brings it all together in a powerful integrated solution that helps associations improve their ability to engage their members. So, hello everybody, I'm Matt. I'm the Director of Customer Support here at Engagifii. I've worked with hundreds of associations across the country over the past decade, helping them implement strategies and technology to help them achieve their goals. I'm joined today by Sharon, who's our growth manager here at Engagifii. Sharon's got nearly 20 experience in sales and marketing, and she's been able to leverage that experience to help our clients improve the way that they engage their members and find pieces of technology to also help them achieve their goals. So go ahead and say, hey, Sharon.
Hey, everyone. I will be
Sharon
answering
is
your
a
questions.
little, go ahead, sorry. Well, Sharon's a little sick. She's a little under the weather, so I'm trying not to require that she says too much here for everybody's benefit. But she will be in the chat. Sorry to step on your toes there, Sharon. She will be in the chat. Don't forget, we want to engage with you during the webinar. Sharon's going to be sitting by the chat ready to answer your questions, and we'll have an interactive Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So be sure to hit that chat window in the webinar dashboard so you can engage with us. So let's jump right in. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about member engagement. What is it? Why is it important? And how can we improve it? These are going to be the 3 topics that we talk about today. And I always like to start, in order to improve something, we first need to define it and we need to understand it. So today, that's what we're going to do. Let's get our base definition down first. What is member engagement? Well, simply put, it is the ongoing interaction between you and your members. It's a measurement of how much value that they're going to get from your organization. Members that are less engaged are less likely to receive value, and they perceive less value from the association. So at the 40,000-foot view, that's a solid definition, but one thing you need to do is everybody needs to take that definition and transform it into a message that fits your organization. Here's an example of one of the association executives from the American Nursing Association. They said that member engagement is an investment of time, money, attention, and participation, not just from the association members, but the members and the association in order to provide meaningful, long-term, mutually beneficial experiences. So, that's the big thing here is it's not just the way that your members perceive and receive information or value from the association. It's also the value that you get from your members as well. That kind of is how we define member engagement here. Now, there's a warning here. I've got it written in big, bold letters here. Let's not just jump to what we call transactional touch points without actually defining engagement. Most associations say, oh, our engaged members are the ones that, show up to events or open our emails. And these are touch points that measure engagement, but it's not actually defining what engagement is. Just because a member attended your annual conference doesn't mean that they're actually engaged. And in fact, if they weren't engaged effectively at the conference, they might even leave less engaged than they were before. So you need to understand your own definition of engagement, and that's going to help you create your strategy and then execute against that strategy. So, why does this matter? In order to understand that, let's review some stats. We've compiled research from across the industry, and after the presentation, we're going to send out a copy of this slide deck with our resource guide, so you guys will be able to read all these studies on your own without, our 2 cents added on top of it. So let's start with renewals. Last year, 67% of association executives surveyed indicated that they had declining or stagnant membership renewals. So they were losing members faster than they could gain them. Now, there's a variety of factors that impact renewal rates for associations. And when we look at those, we can see that it all comes down to member engagement. 41% of associations executives surveyed indicated that the number one reason for their members not renewing is actually a lack of engagement with the organization. Now, this was the number one answer. If we were playing Family Feud, it would be worth like the big points right there at the top of the board. But if we actually dig deeper into the rest of the answers, we can see that they kind of all tie back into member engagement. So here I split them up into a couple different categories. We've got cost and we have benefits. People that don't renew for cost reasons are just not perceiving the value of the membership. Otherwise they'd find a way to pay for it. Some cost reasons are, I couldn't justify the ROI, or, that the employer won't pay, or it's too expensive. These are all perceived cost or perceived value problems that tie directly back to member engagement. The other thing that people cited were, a lack of benefits. People weren't renewing because they were not receiving the value from the relationship. And even some of the other ones down here under miscellaneous, if we look at things like poor service or disagreement of positions, it can all kind of get boiled back down to engagement, which means like out of all of these things we put up here, like 75% of these can all be tied back directly to member engagement. Now, on average, associations report that member dues makes up like 1/3 of their revenue. So it means that if you're losing the member engagement game, it's directly impacting your bottom line. So clearly, member engagement is important for associations. And if improving engagement wasn't your key goals before the presentation, I'm hoping that it is now. So the question is, what can we do to improve member engagement? Now, clearly, this is a challenge. Otherwise, that you wouldn't have all these associations citing a lack of engagement as their number one issue. And when I go about creating a plan to fix a problem, I like to break it down into a couple pieces. And I start with what I call the low-hanging fruit. There's one area that I think all associations can make some small changes and see a huge benefit, and that's the first-year renewal. On average, almost 30% of first-time members just don't renew their membership. And that number is actually skewed a little bit by trade associations. If we were talking just about associations with individual memberships, they're actually losing 35% of their first-year members. So this is a perfect example of where a little bit of work on engagement can actually have huge results. And the reason is because it actually costs 5 times more dollars to acquire a new member than it does to keep an existing one. Well, why is that? Well, right off the bat, we know that if they renew in the first year, they're 10% more likely to renew in the years following. But members also have a higher net value because long-term members have a higher net value because they do things like donate to foundations more frequently, they purchase more training, they attend more events, they subscribe to more services, they purchase at higher membership levels. And so we need to figure out how we can ensure that our first-year members renew and actually become these long-term members. So, one thing that you can do is implement an onboarding plan. Does your association have an onboarding plan so that from the moment that they signed up, they're instantly building that personal relationship, and in turn, your member is receiving the value of their relationship? The first months are make or break. This is going to set the tone for the entire relationship with your association. And for those associations that say they have an onboarding process, most just kind of send welcome emails, and that's like their member onboarding plan. 75% of associations do that. The crazy thing is that 25% can't even be bothered to send a personalized welcome email. But you can't just send out a welcome email and hope for the best. Among some of the other most popular onboarding methods are things like profile creation and welcome kits and membership cards. And while these are all good opportunities for you to provide value to the members, these items aren't necessarily points of engagement because engagement is a two-way street. So you need to find ways to create that engagement loop by giving them value and then getting value back from them. Trade associations actually do a pretty good job with first-year renewals. Their first-year renewal rate is actually 16% higher than all other types of associations. And one strategy that they use more frequently than any other type of association is a simple welcome phone call from the association. They get volunteers or staff members to make these calls, welcoming new joining members. And this just illustrates how a simple conversation with a personal touch can make a huge difference. So let's take a look at some other associations that have high renewal rates, this plus 80% renewal rate associations. This is all based on that study that we're going to send to you guys in the resource packet at the end of the presentation. And you know, basically, we find that a personal touch makes a huge difference. You can engage with them with technology, and digital can still be personal as well. You can give your welcome email that personal touch by having it come from an executive director. You can create engagement opportunities by giving members action items like registering for your next event, because studies actually show that new members that attend an event within the first 6 months of starting their membership are twice as likely to renew as those that don't. And another action item to consider is, you know, having them log in and update their member interest profile so you can learn how best to engage with your new members. You can do things like send out surveys and questionnaires. You know, don't be afraid to ask for feedback. We want to make sure that we are providing the value that they're expecting to receive with their membership. And the only way to do that is to understand what their interests are, and you can do that by having them update those interest profiles or simply just getting feedback in the form of surveys. One thing that associations with high renewal rates have is a members only section of their website. And you know, this kind of serves two purposes. From an operations perspective, giving access to a members only section of the website where they can do things like update their profile and record their interests helps you to keep your data clean. You know, it puts that burden of keeping everything up to date on your members, and it solves two problems. You know, you have them log in, you manage they manage their own information, it keeps it up to date, and in turn keeps them more engaged. And if you have a members only section of your website, you're able to track your members' interest by looking at their behavior and how they interact with your members only section. So you can understand what it is they want and where they're going to get it to ensure that you provide that value to them. It helps members kind of perceive the value of your membership because they got to be a member to continue to get access to that information on your website. So these are all things that you can do with technology to help you improve that member onboarding process here. So, you know, now we move on to a more challenging portion. You know, we're off of the low-hanging fruit. Now we got to move further up the tree. You know, I never really understood, as an aside, never really understood the whole low-hanging fruit thing until I actually had fruit trees in my front yard. I can tell you that it is a lot easier to go after the low-hanging fruit than it is to try to get a ladder and climb up there at my old age. Anyway, we're going to move on to the more challenging portion. In order to solve the member engagement problem, let's diagnose it a bit. And the best way that we can do that is to understand what was it that caused our members to join the association. That's going to define the value that they're expecting from their membership. So if you can understand why they joined, we can make sure that we're providing that value. And far and away, the number one reason members join any association is actually for networking opportunities. And now more than ever, networking is kind of tough. You know, to solve that problem, a lot of associations are actually turning to online communities. As of last year, about 45% of associations reported that they didn't even have an online community, which means, you know, 55% did. But, you know, simply having that online community is not going to be enough. We've even seen statistics that said that, you know, a lot of associations with lower renewal rates are engaging with these online communities more, but it ends up being this thing where they're trying to improve their member engagement. You know, they've got low renewals, they need to get onto these member communities, and the ones that have super high renewal rates are not necessarily using these online communities. So the point is, you know, an online community is not going to solve your membership engagement problem on its own. You need to go one step further. And so one way that you can do that is by, you know, creating some networking opportunities, especially with the pandemic and everything going on. That's going to be a real challenge. And for associations that are canceling your in-person events and moving to virtual conferences, you know, the annual conference for a lot of associations is like their primary networking event. I've been to plenty of conferences where people show up to socialize first and to do all their work second. So if you're considering moving to a virtual conference, you need to make sure that you're maintaining those networking opportunities and not just, you know, shooting out information to them in the form of presentations and things like that. You need to find ways to improve the networking capability of your virtual events. And so, we picked a couple of networking things that people do during live events, and let's try to figure out how we can provide those virtually as well. So, a lot of associations use like a buddy or a mentoring program during their events. That can be adapted to online conferences, while the usual program might require that buddies meet up once or twice during the live event. That same thing can be done with a virtual meeting over Zoom or whatever the virtual meeting platform that your association is using. You can host a series of virtual lounges that people can jump in and out of, and during certain time blocks, you can have facilitators like your staff or your speakers or member volunteers in the lounges to kind of keep the conversation going. One area that people are sad to see is that they don't get to wear their badges to the conference anymore. A lot of attendees like to customize their conference badges, or they use it as a way to show off awards and training certificates and things like that they've received. And badges can be an icebreaker, to help members introduce themselves and mix and mingle. So even though there's not going to be any physical badging during a virtual meeting, you can easily have your attendees create like electronic badges or use virtual backgrounds to achieve a similar result to help them break the ice with their members. So, another thing that people join associations for is for learning, and members are really looking for an association to be a thought leader. So one thing that we want to be able to do is provide all the learning and information that we can and make it easily accessible for our members. One way you can do that is by creating a library of resources. You can communicate the value in the early stages of your membership by giving access to a library that gets updated regularly. Instead of just sending the files out to them, which can easily get passed around to people, you lose that tracking, and it can be time consuming for your staff and just impractical if they're kind of large files. Having resources uploaded in a shared location, like in the Engagifii library, enables people to get the information on demand, search and find what they're looking for, and it ensures that that information is always up to date because they're not going back and trying to find some email that they got 6 months ago. They're just logging in, seeing that library, and finding the most up-to-date version of that information. Another thing you can do is enroll members in online learning. When members enroll in an online learning or training program, they're more likely to engage with your association over the lifetime of their membership. Once you've made new members aware of your learning system, you can send them a link to catalogs, they can browse relevant courses, and it kind of creates a sense of urgency that you can use to drive action and engagement, because once the training program rolls out, if they've got regularly scheduled classes and courses and awards that they can go after, it kind of maintains that level of engagement throughout the year. And frankly, when it comes time to renew their membership, if they're 75% of the way to achieving a credit, they're going to continue their membership just so that they didn't, there's no sunk cost associated with that. Another thing you can do is create learning paths. It provides a great opportunity to structure courses so they encourage members to stay on and renew their membership instead of just instead of canceling midstream. Instead of viewing like these professional credits and development credits as individual units, you can create structures of complementary credits and create courses and learning paths that will end in designations or formal certificates that give your members some longer term goals to work towards as part of their continuing education. A lot of our clients use the award feature of our training and accreditation system to generate like complex learning paths for their members. One client actually created these specialty tracks that enabled members to get additional awards for those that went above and beyond the standard training. So not only did it generate additional training revenue, it created a sense of pride for their members because at the conference, they got to have these extra badges and awards on their name tags. So we talked about networking, we talked about training. The next reason people join associations is to receive information from the industry, like directories and studies and reports. But over the past couple years, most associations, 77%, reported that their paper directories and books are seeing stagnant or declining sales. Additionally, more than half of associations reported an increase in the visits of their members only section on their website. So why not just publish that information on your website? We just finished the implementation for a client that wanted to digitize their member directory, and we enabled their members to update their profiles, which in turn then updated the member database. The directory pulled the information right out of the database and published it on their website. So now the directory is dynamically updated whenever a member updates their profile. This reduced staff overhead, it eliminated printing and shipping costs, and it gave members valuable information that never went out of date right on the website. It also drove members to their website, which is a key component of their member engagement toolbox, and it encouraged renewal because they know that if they ever discontinue their membership, they lose out on this valuable directory that is now only available online and not in a paper book. All right, so another reason that members join associations is for advocacy. Advocacy is one of the top 5 reasons that members join, and but I've seen time and time again that many associations don't really do a good job of adding government relations into their engagement mix. And the industry agrees with me. According to this study, associations said it was tough to get members involved in their association efforts. In this report, which we'll include in the resource packet, a top advocacy consultant said the best way to improve member engagement around advocacy was to make the information relevant, interesting, exciting, and accessible. Now, access is more than just sending out emailed reports throughout the session. You need to give people a place to communicate on the issues in order to drive engagement around your advocacy priorities. And another problem I see in the advocacy space here is that a lot of associations don't do a good job of keeping their members engaged throughout the year. Obviously, during the legislative session, there's a lot of information floating around. It makes it really easy to find things to talk about and to share with members. But that time between sessions is just as important. Think about your annual conference, for example. Would you wait until the day of your conference to open up registration? No, you'd start months in advance. You'd line up speakers, you'd send out email reminders, and you'd start telling people about next year's conference right after the end of this year's conference. And advocacy and legislation should be treated the same way. You need to get people engaged throughout the entire year so that when you finally do need them to speak out, they're going to be there, they're going to be informed, and they'll be ready to act. Now, if your association management platform has integrated government relations tools, it makes information accessible, makes it a lot easier for your members. And that's why at Engagifii, we make government relations a core part of our platform. And speaking of technology, this is another place where technology can help again. To recap, we talked about a couple of these points and how they relate to those member motivations. Members join to learn, and so training management solution can help you build learning paths and encourage members to keep training. Training solutions can help you create badges and awards, and it gives members a sense of accomplishment and allows them to share that sense of accomplishment with their network. Advocacy software can help your members speak up about the issues that matter to them, and a database that lets you build and publish directories can deliver huge value to your members and save your staff time and energy. So let's talk about one area where associations actually do a really good job of engaging with their members, and that's at their annual conference. Many associations have really talented event managers that do a fantastic job during their annual conference to ensure that their members feel connected and get their money's worth. And one tool that associations use to engage during these events is an event app. And while apps are great engagement tools for the conference, unfortunately, most attendees actually just delete the app from their phone as soon as they get home. So not only do you only get that engagement tool, you get to harness that engagement tool for like 3 days out of the year. And so, imagine how great it would be if you could actually leverage that level of engagement that you have at the conference throughout the entire year. And so one thing we can recommend here is actually not just getting a conference app, but getting an association app that has conference capabilities in it. It's an app that your users will be able to have on their phones all year round, and it'll give members much more value that ties back to those membership motivations. You can give them access to directories. You can publish your legislative reports. They can track their status towards their achievement of awards, and they can communicate with other members throughout the network. So, consider getting an association app that has conference functionality that can help you maintain that level of engagement all throughout the year. Now, this is the point where somebody inevitably says, hey, Matt, my members are too old and they use flip phones. So, an app's not going to work from us. But I want to push back on that a little bit. I got to ask, are you sure that that's true? In the study that we saw, association execs reported that baby boomers, that older generation, makes up only about a third of their membership, while Gen X and millennials are now half of their membership and continuing to rise. So the majority of your members may not be these old people that use flip phones and don't have smartphones. And that's also shown here in this other stat. 70% of adults over 50 have a smartphone, and 70% of people over the age of 65 use the internet every day. I mean, my mom has a smartphone. She's on Facebook all the time, and she's in her 70s. And so, this is an older way of thinking. This is not the way that the industry is moving. The industry is moving ahead, and people are implementing technology for themselves a lot more frequently. Your members aren't old and out of touch with technology anymore. And if you don't actually cater to that younger crowd, you might end up leaving your association irrelevant. In the same study that we saw, associations reported they had no change in membership, the ones that were not growing or adding new members, had a higher percentage of baby boomers. And associations that reported an increase in renewals that were growing and increasing their ranks of members actually had a higher percentage of Gen X members. So the only way to grow your association in the space is to start to cater to that younger generation. And you got to do it now before it's too late and everybody's gone. So the other thing people say is, hey, my members live out in the middle of nowhere and they don't have internet access. I hear that all the time. And the fact of the matter is that's not really true either. The whole pandemic and COVID has dramatically increased the amount of government spending. They're spending billions of dollars to expand high-speed internet access all across the country. And recent studies show, we've got the study which will be available in the resource guide, nearly all Americans, 93, 94% of Americans have access to high-speed internet. So they're using cell phones, they're using smartphones, they've got the internet. So having apps and having these things, these online resources and pieces of technology will impact the majority of your members now. So let's talk about the way that most associations are doing their primary focus on engagement, and that's through email. Forgive my language, but email sucks, guys. It's just not effective anymore. Recent studies showed that business people, which are the folks that are probably your members, get on average over 100 emails a day. And just getting people to open your emails is tough. On average, an average open rate for an email is somewhere between 15 and 25%, which means the majority of the people that receive your emails are not even reading them. And email providers are making things even more difficult. Google it has about 25% market share on the total number of email inboxes across the country, and in doing my research here, I learned about this new thing called gray mail. Google has these foldering systems, and this is something a lot of email providers are starting to do now, where they automatically sort emails into the important inbox and the promotions inbox and the updates inbox. If you guys use Google, you've probably seen that before. Well, gray mail is that mail that never reaches your important inbox. It's not spam, it doesn't go to your junk folder, but it kind of just hangs out in this purgatory. Gray mail makes up for about 82% of a user's daily mail. And if your association newsletters or legislative reports or updates are going into that gray mail dead zone, then your email engagement efforts are completely going to waste. And on top of that, associations reported that about 45% of their members said that emails were engaging. So what can we do to improve our engagement with email and to ensure that our emails don't turn gray? Well, if they're opening and reading your emails, then they won't get relegated to that email pile. And if you can get them to open emails, you can get them to open emails by making the content more relevant to them, by personalizing the emails so they don't look like pre-canned messages. And you can deliver emails in segments based on their interests to make sure that their members are getting the information that they want from you. Once again, this is all about creating value for your members. So try to find ways to communicate, to create this two-way communication in your emails as well. Let's ask questions, give action items. Remember, engagement is a two-way street. So if we want to improve engagement around emails, we need to create these engagement opportunities by giving the members the ability to engage back with us and not just receive email. So, but email is not enough anymore. You need to find new ways to reach your audience, and one way that you can do that is actually through social media, believe it or not. This is something that has been top of mind for a lot of associations over the past decade. We're starting to get some really good statistics on this stuff, and we're starting to understand how members are actually using social media, and believe it or not, most associations have it completely wrong. So let's talk about, what do you share? Sharing, let's think about this as in the rule of thirds. They joined your association to receive information about your industry. So the latest news and tips, that's the kind of stuff that they're looking for. We want to send out about a third of our social media information about industry news, tips, and informative content. But you also need to take that opportunity to promote your member benefits so that your members understand the value of their membership. It's, once again, the engagement is about received and perceived value from the association. So you need to take this opportunity to also promote those benefits. And finally, you need to interact with them so you can build that community and provide these networking opportunities, because engagement is all about relationships. And once again, the number one reason that they joined your association was for networking. So start to build those personal relationships and encourage that they build relationships with other members as well, because that's the networking, and that helps them derive value from the association. So this is all the stuff that we need to share, but the big question is, where do we share it? Most association executives, here's this actual survey that we saw in the report, most association executives said that they recommended Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. These are the ones that are most used by associations. However, if you actually look at the usage of these social media platforms, the usage is going to tell you where members are spending most of their time, and therefore where they can be engaged the most. And surprisingly enough, these are not the top three. If we look at the usage of social media across a whole bunch of different age brackets and income brackets, the number one social media platform is actually YouTube. And it's not just for young people. YouTube is far and away the number one social media platform across all age groups and all income brackets. I've highlighted a couple of these here to show you. 30 to 49 is 87% market share. 50 to 64, 70% of people in that age bracket said that they use YouTube. And even 38% of seniors, 65 and plus, are using YouTube. And that the same holds with higher income brackets as well. So if these highlighted numbers look like your members, this is where they're spending all their time. And look at the difference between YouTube and Facebook. YouTube is beating Facebook by double digits in almost all these categories. And the surprise here as well is that Twitter and LinkedIn are way low. Look at this. The usage of Twitter amongst people that are more likely to be your association members is only 17%. The majority of people that are on Twitter are going to be in this younger age bracket. So, what that means is that you guys could be spinning your wheels trying to engage your members over social media and these platforms that are just not going to have an impact. So, one thing that you can consider is creating videos about the latest industry news, speaker presentations from your conferences, legislative updates during the legislative session, and member spotlights so that you can enable members to build their network, and you can ensure that they're getting the information where they spend most of their time by creating these videos and uploading them to YouTube so that you can create those engagement opportunities there. And the other thing is, if you are having trouble accessing, these Gen Xers and the millennials, YouTube is a great tool for you guys to do that. We're even going to have a webinar coming up in a couple weeks called, it's a little mini webinar called Find Ways to Engage the Next Generation. We're going to talk about engaging Gen X and millennial members, and I'm sure there will be plenty of Star Trek jokes because our VP of Customer Success, Ben, is a huge Star Trek fan, and he will not be able to resist the fact that we called this the next generation. So, to recap, 5 things you need to know about member engagement. Number 1, an engaged member equals a renewed member. Engagement is tied directly to your bottom line, guys, so it needs to be one of your top priorities when you are choosing strategies and also implementing technology. Any piece of technology that you guys implement needs to have engagement as one of its core focuses. Engagement strategies need to focus on building relationships and interactions and not just transactions. Once again, simply coming to the conference is not engagement. We need to ensure that we go one step further and we define engagement for ourselves in terms of relationships and interactions and not transactions. One of the key areas where you can have an instant impact on your renewal rates is by improving your member onboarding process and doing a better job of engaging members by implementing some new strategies to make sure that your new members become engaged members and you can save that acquisition cost that you guys are incurring by losing out on members that don't renew in their first year. Engagement strategies need to be tied to value, okay? Remember, this all comes down to those 5 motivations, the reason why your members joined your association: networking, learning, information, advocacy, and events. Those are the 5 motivations. That's the reason why people joined your membership organization, and all of your engagement strategies need to be harnessed and need to impact those 5 member motivations. And finally, the easiest and best way to do this is going to be to implement a technology platform that enables your member engagement strategy by having engagement as its core. So, thank you, everybody. That is the presentation. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen in today. We've got Sharon and our team available to you guys if you have any questions. If you're interested in learning more about the Engagifii platform, how we can help you guys improve your member engagement, feel free to give us a call or shoot us an email. We've also got our calendar link available so you guys can schedule time with an association consultant to help you guys implement and create new strategies.